I'm here today with Jaden Lister, who's a guy I met from the Bitcoin East meetup group. Also have a interesting Telegram chat group. I'm not sure if this makes me sound very old or him sound very young, but he's under half my age. And I think it's great to have a good mix of ages and backgrounds and everything on the group, so on the podcast. So when Jaden was keen to be part of the conversation, I was more than happy to oblige. So hi Jaden, thanks for coming on.
Oh no, thank you. It was great to have an opportunity like this for me to speak, so thank you.
Do you want to, before we kind of kick on with a conversation, do you want to give a little bit of a background to kind of who you are, what you do?
Okay, so I'm Jaden Lister. Where do I start? I'm a young man at 23 who's kind of been involved in Bitcoin, so that's the kind of shitcoin space is what I now call it, for the past probably 3 and a bit years. And that was through Adam, who got me kind of to notice really what Bitcoin was through our group chat 3 years ago. And it was great to catch up with him the other night when we met up. So I've been involved within the Bitcoin space for the last 3 years. I think you're intrigued about my views on life, and that's kind of why I wanted to get on. So formally, I'm kind of a part of Reform UK, but really this group that I've been a part of with Bitcoin East isn't really about that. At the same time, it's about my personal journey with Bitcoin, but also I want to be a leader kind of within this space because I do have aspirations of becoming a parliamentary candidate one day.
Yeah, that's great. And also, without blowing smoke up your backside, for someone who is 23, I just think some of your, we'll come into this in the conversation, but some of your maturity in your kind of outlook on finances and life and everything is just, I think you've got a head on your shoulders that is beyond your years, which is, I think, great. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Brilliant, I'm too.
So for most of my guests, I ask them about their earliest childhood memories of money, and for a lot of them, they've got to really dig deep in the past. But for you, it's probably like...
Not that long ago.
Well, last week, I found 50p down the back of the sofa. But no, but I still think it's relevant because obviously when you were a kid, it's a lot more recent than when I was a kid. So like, again, in terms of, without getting too deep, your childhood growing up, relationship with money in the family and all those kind of things, what's your feelings around that?
Cool. I've got a kind of a little memory, more to do, without getting too deep, but I kind of grew up not in a great environment, and money was scarce. It was going to school with clothes that either weren't washed for a long period of time or old clothes, and hand-me-downs from other friends and things like that were older. So money's always kind of been at the forefront of my head throughout my entire life, and kind of how can I make my situation better. And so, yeah, I do remember trying to protect whatever little money that I got for my birthday, because if not, family or more my mum, they would kind of find a way to get that out of me. Then I would be left with nothing, and I would, want to go to the shops, buy some sweets, and that was what I really wanted. And I really wanted that, what the other kids had, but I couldn't because of my childhood. Money's always been a big thing for me.
And that kind of, did that follow through into your like early teens? Like if you started getting Saturday jobs and things, did it?
Yeah, as I got a little bit older, so I was in foster care from kind of the age of 13, 14, and my relationship with money got better as I got better parent figures in my life that kind of taught me the importance of it, and not to kind of be so, I don't know how do I put it, it's not the forefront of life, and actually it's a part of working hard and understanding kind of what money is and how to earn it, and I learned valuable lessons that way. So my first kind of job was working with a paper round with my mate Reese in Wyndham, and getting paid god awful money. I remember, absolutely awful, and kind of that time when I was 13, 14, I became a referee for youth football, and the money was 10 times better. I was earning about £25 to £30 a week, as opposed to my mate was probably earning £5 a week, if that. And yeah, I just kind of loved that, saving up that kind of money, putting it into savings account at that point. I wish I'd just bought Bitcoin back then. I mean, who knows what could have been. But yeah, just learning valuable lessons was.
How did you even find out about like savings accounts? Like, do you mean literally a savings account, or do you mean you had a piggy bank?
Both. More literally savings accounts. I was quite good. So with my nan, from my mother's side, she opened a bank account for me from a young age. So I always had my own bank account from a young age. And when I was in foster care, they opened another bank account for me, put money aside for me, and kind of not invested it, but made sure that I had something for when I was 18 when I left the care system.
Yeah. So that was a transformational period then, going into the foster care and maybe the extra stability and support that gave you.
Yes, definitely. It's weird. So you're kind of with people that aren't your parents, but they become like a parent, and for them to kind of teach you, again, like any parent, you teach your kids their your own values, and I really appreciated actually that they treated me like a son. They wanted me to do well in life, and I'm still thankful to them for this day for giving me those foundations. As much as I wish they'd have just said buy Bitcoin, but no, I'm really glad that they've instilled those within me.
Do you still stay in touch with them?
Less so now, if not at all, just through life, and kind of towards the end of my time with them, it wasn't great, if I'm being totally honest. But I'm still grateful, nonetheless, for the lessons that they taught me.
You're quite into health and fitness.
I've started playing football from a very young age, and then got into a youth football team. How I got into refereeing was, and I regret it, and I've apologised to my coach back then, but we did fall out. I didn't call him a nice name, and from then, from the age of 13, 14, got kicked out of the football team, and my foster parent was, well, you want to keep involved in some way, why not try refereeing? And I thought, well, no, who wants to be a referee? And now actually refereing's become a big part of my life. I'm now a semi-professional referee within the men's game. Do kind of have aspirations to hit the full-time professional game, but that's just an ongoing goal of mine, alongside many other goals in life as a young man that I have. With regards to health and fitness, it became more important as I got to college, because as a young kid, I think there's a stigma for kind of weight training and things like that as young kids, where me finding out about now, there shouldn't be a stigma around it. It's safe to, as long as you're in a safe lifting environment. And so I wish I would have lifted weights a lot earlier, but they didn't kind of come about until I was 17, 18, learning about different foods and learning about the gut, learning about just everything that is just so good for up here and keeping me in check with my life and making me feel happy.
No, that's great. And I wondered, given you have a pretty good understanding and appreciation for money and finance, I might be overreaching here, but is there a kind of intrinsic link between your approach to health and fitness and how important that is to applying those same kind of thought principles to money?
Actually, I think you've just made me realise that, actually. Yes, actually. My mindset is that when I want to research something, as boring as I suppose other people find it, I want to know every little point about everything and, different studies and whether that be thousands of hours on YouTube about 20 different things within health and fitness or Bitcoin as such. I've always kind of had that mindset where I don't just believe what someone tells me, I want to find out for myself. I've always been told, save up money, buy a house, and that's been throughout generations, whether that's my family and whether that's be when I was in foster care. That's always been the kind of mentality: is save cash, buy a house, and then retire when you're however old, or probably when I'm 80 odd.
You saying about wanting to find every little nuance and every little detail. How do you trust versus verify? Is quite a big thing in Bitcoin. I.e., don't just trust someone. Verify it for yourself.
Yes.
Obviously, in health and fitness, again, there's an overlap with finance and Bitcoin and traditional finance. How have you approached the verify versus just trusting what someone tells you?
When I was working in the gym, so I would have been about 19 or so. So I would have just been going through that COVID period. So from 18 to 19, and I didn't have a lot of money during COVID. I wish I would have worked because this whole mass hysteria around it. I was living with my nan at the time. And I suppose during COVID, actually, I had all that time just to watch YouTube videos and content. And, little by little, I was finding a little bit more around the kind of crypto space, but I didn't kind of pay attention to it. But I was finding videos about how actually the old system of how it used to work for the older generation, that you could buy a house or multiple houses with a lower stream of income proportional to what you're earning. And then I was finding people that were like in their 30s that still couldn't afford to buy a house, and I'm thinking, well, if I'm going to try and save for something, and then I'm seeing people that are just putting all of their money and their wealth into one house to then pay it off, and then they get to 60, 70 or whenever they pay it off, because bearing in mind a lot of people are now buying houses in their 30s, so they're a lot older than what they used to be. So then you work your whole life in the same job for that house to then retire and then eventually die 10 to 15 to 20 years later. And I don't want that life. I don't really want that life to be stuck in the same kind of rat race and the same job. And that's just kind of the link that I've had with kind of fitness as well, that I've been told you don't need to train. What I understood about my health and fitness was actually don't believe just what you're told. Understand that there are things to do with the gut and all these kind of things that aren't told in the mainstream. I was linked that with my finance, and then kind of, well, I don't just want to save it, I should invest it. But I started in the wrong place. Started with the stock market, and so got into the gym, saved loads of money, and I had I think it was about 16 grand to kind of play with. And so just before I kind of got involved with Adam and Bitcoin, I then started dabbling in, I was buying like shares of BP stock and all kinds of things. I thought dividends was the way forward.
Yeah, but you can't beat yourself up about that. I mean, again, it's easy to look back on how well Bitcoin has performed and say, oh, what an idiot I was. But
Yeah.
you can't beat yourself up about that.
No.
Plenty of 20-year-olds that were just buying Louis Vuitton bags and,
If that,
you know,
buying Nike and Adidas and all kinds of stupid things. But
yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting around what you've just said with health and fitness and the link to guts and just not believing everything you hear.
Yes.
And again, I think this is true with finance too, is one size doesn't fit all. The same approach, the same outlook doesn't suit everyone. So whether that's a certain diet, because certain foods might really agree with me and my gut and my well-being and my health and fitness and energy levels, but just might not work for you. So all of these one-dimensional, here is what you have to do to be healthy and fit, and here's what you have to do to be financially secure, is like, there are threads to that, but everyone has to find their own way, I think.
They have to find their own way, and it's having this kind of mindset is a good and bad thing, by the way, in my opinion. When it's almost like overthinking about everything, whether that be why the TV's square, and then I start thinking about, I don't know, maybe the company that wanted to design it to make it for better for sales. Like I constantly think about those kind of things all the time. I'm constantly thinking about that, and so
that's curiosity, isn't it? Having curiosity is not a bad thing in life. If it becomes every waking minute of your life, then
almost, and that's what I struggled with. So to find people that kind of resonate with you with that similar mindset has been honestly a breath of fresh air, because over time, of course, friendships do change. And so I was finding with family members and friendships that having this kind of mindset, I wasn't connecting with people because they were talking about their Love Island or what's happened on the BBC and mass hysteria of all kinds of things. And I'm just thinking, well, actually, no, it's not that. It's actually this, or actually, no, this is my way of thinking around it, because it's actually these 10 things which have contributed to this. Yeah. And I think it kind of alienates yourself until you find like-minded people, such as yourself, and that don't mind sharing multiple different views of the world, which is actually a breath of fresh air. So thank you as well for tolerating me. Actually,
no, but it works both ways, doesn't it? I have reasonably strong views, but reasonably loosely held, because if someone else can persuade me that this one thing I'm thinking, if you put this slant on it, maybe you might look at it a slightly different way, then often I do. And so the worst conversations are people who just believe what they hear and don't think for themselves. It's a fine line sometimes between that and just being a conspiracy theorist about everything. But yeah, it's a tricky balance.
Bitcoin does kind of lead you that way, I think. It's not just obviously the monetary system, but reading, so I'm going to have to do this, the Bitcoin Standard.
Yeah.
If I was to say that, like I said to you before, the parallels between the Bitcoin Standard and what it teaches you, the history of money, that the parallels of today is basically it's what's happened before is happening again with the debasement of currency. And people start thinking you're a conspiracy theorist for even talking about that when it's factual. And so I'm now becoming of the mind where I start seeing things, whether it's the news or Bitcoin or anything, and it's almost like, actually, no, a lot of these what would be considered conspiracy theories seems to be true, what I'm finding anyway. But we don't need to go too much into that.
As soon as you start researching Bitcoin, it sends you down so many different tangents and avenues and things that you didn't even think were relevant or appropriate in understanding what Bitcoin is. Suddenly it's like, actually, the fact we've got loads of ultra-processed foods and kids are being pumped with sugary cereals for breakfast and stuff, like that's broken money. That is broken money. It's not literally, but it's a downstream effect of the fact that money's being printed, corporations are having to find ways to cut costs and grow profits to keep up because of shareholders who are trying to do the same, because all the money that we have, you can't keep it under your mattress, because next year it's worth less, and the year after, and after about 8 years it's worth half as much as it was than when you put it under the mattress. So we all have to do these different things with our money, which
Yes.
isn't really money. Was it mainly through Adam that you found Bitcoin?
Met Adam through the gym and started to speak to me about, Bitcoin, and started sending me kind of articles and videos and all kinds of things. And I was thinking about it. I'm thinking, well, it's however many thousands of pounds at the time. Thinking, well, I can just put it in the stock market and put it into other coins that are worth 0.00 of a penny, without actually realizing the technology behind Bitcoin, and actually what makes it valuable and what makes it hard money, essentially, rather than actually, not understanding that these, what we can now call shitcoins, don't have the same intrinsic value as Bitcoin does, what Bitcoin does, because they're not trying to be what Bitcoin is, like a store of value or a currency. They're trying to be whatever they are within the system that they are. So it could be like a healthcare coin that you need to hold to buy their services. Well, that's not really a store of value or a currency. Crypto's this whole big wide thing, and I think actually people need to look at, in my view, so I'm not against the crypto industry as such, I just think they should stay away from actually buying the crypto coins itself, because I think there is valuable technology to be used, whether it be in healthcare or science and so on and so forth. I think it's valuable to me, but I don't think necessarily should be buying the coins itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, too much of the crypto space, still people who are looking to invest in it still have that same number go up mindset.
Yes, definitely.
For example, the Trump meme coin, right? That is literally what it is. So
That was
if
number
it had
go up.
been advertised, marketed as, look, this is your way of showing support for Donald Trump. And at some point in the future, we might, I don't know, if you own Trump coin, you might get access to some kind of event, or what, there might be some activity around it, but it's not a store of value. It's probably not going to go up in value. If anything, it might go down in value, but this is what it is. Trouble is, it doesn't work like that. Both the industry that create these things and generally the people who want to buy it are just looking for that quick buck, and they're looking to get in, ride the wave, get out, and then buy their Lambo. And it's most Bitcoiners, I suspect, me included, originally bought Bitcoin with that mindset, which is, I'm going to buy it at one price, it's going to go up, and then I've got more
cash.
Yeah, I've got more pounds to spend on stuff that I want to buy. But then, yeah, over time, certainly my journey, I've completely, all of the shitcoinery's gone. So you still do hold other coins again.
Yeah, so
I'll let you talk.
Let me talk about my transition. Back when Adam started talking about it, so 2021 to 2022. So I understood like kind of Bitcoin was the thing to buy, but also then I was messing around with other shit coins. But throughout my transition, once I was, I was losing money. I was then buying different. I was all over the place with it. I mean, you were buying so many different things because it was going to go up to 1,000x or whatever. And then I slowly started to understand. Okay, slow it down. And then it came around the 2022 FTX crash.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin fell to around £13,000. And I was telling my dad, like, Dad, actually, you have to buy Bitcoin now. You have to. Because this is I think this is almost the bottom of the market. Again, no one can ever call it, but I think loads of people, influencers that I was listening to at the time on like Twitter, was saying this is the kind of the bottom, or could be. And so with the money that I'd kind of made and saved over the course of that period, bought some. But I was still thinking, well, actually, this is the kind of thing to hold, but I'll still mess around with all kinds of other shit coins.
For the same reason, I guess, because you were looking at them thinking they're bottomed out as well, and they're going to go up, and they might go up faster than Bitcoin.
Yes. So
was that
I wasn't
mindset?
thinking about 20 years or 30 years time with Bitcoin. I was still thinking about it. Well, this is kind of like a guaranteed 2x, 3x. That's kind of what I was thinking. And then as it got to 2023, 2024, I'm still investing in all kinds of other coins. And I'd say probably around 2024, early 2024, that's where it kind of swayed completely different. And I was watching more content on Bitcoin. I've got to look at the long term with this, because I'm starting to understand that cash is only just going down in value and never going back up. And I think if people actually knew that the rate of inflation, of course people do, but people think that when inflation goes down, it doesn't like reverse, it's just that the percentage that it's going slower up. Like it never goes down.
You can have deflation in the price of things that you're buying.
Yes.
If the government is still printing money,
therefore
that's still inflationary.
If it's 2% inflation, that's gone down to 1%. Well, it's still going up by 1%.
Of course. I mean, the classic for that was when we had post-COVID,
Yes.
and then suddenly there was that wave of like, again, the published inflation rates were whatever they were, 10, 12%, and then they'll say inflation's come down to 5%. So well, that means it's gone up 15% in 2 years.
Yes.
It's not. Yeah, it's
But
yeah.
if people actually could see like the minus in value of their money in their bank accounts, I think people would actually take and look at Bitcoin and actually store values much more seriously and take more interest of it. But because they just see £100 and it's forever getting £100, they don't see that it's buying less and less and less over the course of 100 years. But sorry, going back to altcoins, the plan is everyone. The plan is the end of the year. I know everyone says this when if the market pumps and all this, I will be fully out of altcoins and it will be solely back into Bitcoin. That is it. And a lot of people say, "We'll just sell now, whatever." I could, but I just want to give myself that chance. If it does do whatever kind of X's with these coins that could 10x, 20x, whatever, just want to give me that chance, and that can fulfill my little gamble that I've had over the last 3 and a bit years that I've been constantly putting in my fiat money into. And I just want to at least give myself that little high, and then once I can say, okay, I'm done. Now it's in the long game for 20 years or so, or well, longer, the rest of my life.
None of this is right or wrong. People have different opinions on it, but I think the fact you're saying you're effectively gambling on holding them longer on the hope that some are just going to pump and it'll enable you to get more sats
I'm just
for your shit coins than you could get if you just swapped them now.
indeed I could do, but
Yeah. No, and I'm not saying
money print.
only time will tell if you're right or wrong. Yeah.
And even if
It's
I'm
not.
wrong, I just want to at least give myself that chance. Even if I'm
Yeah,
wrong,
yeah,
I don't care.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can, if I lose that money, I lose that money. Or if I keep the same, whatever, I don't care. I just
yeah,
want to give myself that. I've worked my ass off for the last 3 years. I've put into these altcoins. I just want to see if it does do it. If it does it, it does it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And
yeah.
there's no rush.
But you're not going to trade them in for a Lambo, no?
No, no, no. It'll still be my Skoda Fabia. Even
No.
if I'm a multi-millionaire, I'm sticking with that car
Stay classy, stay
forever.
classy. The other thing I thought was interesting to talk about, and we've had kind of little chats on Telegram and stuff about it, is the traditional route of like pension investing.
Yes.
I've got a pension that's a reasonable size of my net worth, mostly because I'm old and I've been paying into a pension, me and my employer for
To do.
employers for, whatever it is now, getting on for nearly 30 years. I know I don't look old enough. I know. I could see you thinking it, but you didn't have to.
You look great.
But
Morgan does look better though.
yeah, Morgan, your mate Morgan, when he said when he told me his age, I nearly fell off my chair. But yeah, so generally, I would tell people when they work for a company and they can contribute money into a pension and get the tax relief and get the uplift from the contributions from their employer, it's worth doing. Partly, again, none of this, for anyone listening, none of this is financial advice because I'm not qualified to do that. But it's just, this is a thought experiment and just, again, challenging the norms and the ways of thinking. If you were in your late 40s, we were having a conversation about it, then my view would be
Stick with
the
it.
likelihood of something catastrophic happening from Rachel Reeves or any future Chancellor of any college government, the risk of them completely wiping out personal pensions is a risk, but it's probably a fairly slim risk. Whereas for someone who's 23, fourth turning and catastrophes can happen, and the likelihood of them pushing the age that you can access it out to maybe you're 60, 65, and the risk of them kind of taking haircuts off people's investments, genuinely think at your age, unless the scheme you're in with your employer is ridiculously generous, actually investing in Bitcoin is probably going to serve you better in the long run.
It's gonna outperform any pension plan, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, and the avoidance of any doubt, that was your view before you even spoke about it. That wasn't me influencing you and trying to.
That is
Yeah,
my view. I think, I think they'll keep because again, I understand roughly how the whole process works. Because people live longer, of course. Well, if you have people that retire earlier and then live longer, well, of course, those pensions are paid out for longer, and I understand that's why they keep pushing the pension age. And so, if I was to not have Bitcoin in my life and just work, put it in a pension to then have the state pension and then my little private pension that I'd be investing in. Well, what then? I then have access to it when I'm 75 or almost 80. And then what? My best years of my life are done. probably I've got grandkids, and that little amount of money that will pass down will be taxed again. And I don't really want to live a life like that, for being totally
Yeah.
honest. And
Yeah.
actually, in my opinion, when I've done the research on pension plans from companies, yes, I know you get some tax relief and things like that, but the way that I see pension companies uh, invest the money that you put in, I'd want it in just full 100% equities. Like they start de-risking as such when like you're in your 40s, and it's so early.
The benefit of the pension and the risk reduces if you're a 40% taxpayer as
Yes.
well. Because if you're getting a 40% saving now, then even if you think, well, like in my head, if they change the rules in 3, 4, 5 years' time, the amount of benefit I've had from saving 40%, not over 30 years, but I've had a 40% saving over a large proportion of that, I've already compounded that benefit.
Indeed.
So it's out of my control. If they decide to take some now, then there's not a lot I can do about it.
Yeah.
But also some personal pension schemes. So if you're in the nest pension, which is the standard that a lot of people are in, you can't transfer that out. Whereas my previous employer, it was Royal London, and you could do partial redemptions of that and say, right, I want to transfer
Into your SIP.
into a SIP where you can invest in whatever you want. So again, full disclosure, I've got a large portion of mine in MicroStrategy because why wouldn't I? And I know for the toxic Bitcoin maxes, of which there are quite a few,
In our group.
still shit on me for a great hype for that. But I don't know what I can
Where
do.
else are you going to put it? That's the thing.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
not.
the most Bitcoiny thing you can do with your pension because you can't just take the money out. So
Yeah.
you might as well put it in strategy.
Yeah, yeah. And again, like I've got a thick skin. It doesn't worry me. But we all have different situations, setups, families.
Mentality around.
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah,
All of that. I have admiration for people that have that level of conviction and can have that level of their wealth exclusively in Bitcoin. But for someone who's got a reasonable pension and equity in their house, the only way they can do that is give up their pension and sell their house. But then most people don't want to do that. But obviously, the younger you are, if you don't already have a house and you don't have a pension, actually, you've got more opportunity to allocate more of your disposable income into the best performing asset and the scarcest asset the world has ever
Continue
seen.
to be, yeah, and will continue to be for however many generations. So I think the word is dumb. I'm still dumbfounded. I keep looking at the last million or so Bitcoin that's to be mined is in like 2140. It's something crazy like that, and I'm just thinking like I'm not even going to be here. Like I'm 23 and I won't even be there when I won't even be able to see the last block being mined.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I would love to see that. So if I could live to that, I think there's a guy, there's a Brian Johnson that wants to live to like 150 or something that does all, again, a little bit what we talk about with gut health but does all these kind of regimes and whatnot. So if I could do that and then live, and I just want to see the last book mine. That's all I want to do.
So if you're cryogenically frozen
yeah,
back in 2139 just to see the last.
I will be 100. I'll be 140.
Yeah.
I will be.
Well, you never know. I'll almost certainly be gone by then. But you might be clinging on to,
hanging on to the
hanging on by a thread just to see that last block.
It'll be the kombucha that'll keep me going.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, your grand's kefir and my kombucha, and you'll live forever. So the other thing that interests me is like where you think, because again, without blowing smoke up your backside, you're like, for a 23-year-old, you have got like this kind of level of maturity and kind of experience above your years. But where do you see that in yourself compared to your peers? Or if you do, where do you think it comes from?
Yes and no. Obviously, we've all got our own little kid side within us in some shape or form.
Yeah, I'm a complete idiot. So yeah, absolutely.
Indeed, but it's almost because of my childhood, growing up with a drug-addicted parent and so on and so forth. I've always had to be an adult as a kid. I've always had to look after myself and, wash myself, had to take myself to school from a very young age. I've known things that a kid should never know at a very young age. Like I found out that Santa Claus, or, Santa and Tooth Fairy, wasn't even real at like the age of 4.
What?
Yeah, I know.
What are you saying?
Sorry, yeah.
You've shattered my dreams.
Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry, completely off topic of Bitcoin, but the reason why I found out that the tooth fairy wasn't real, I woke up, obviously my tooth was still under the pillow, told my mum, went downstairs, my mum had said the tooth fairy had come, and obviously traditionally, unless, it's, unless you can correct me, it's normally £1 that would then be placed under the pillow for a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, mine, it was 2p's, 5p's, and so on and so forth. That equated to £1. And at 5 years old or whatever I was, I just had the intuition, yeah, that's not the tooth
Yeah. I
fairy.
don't think the Tooth Fairy could have carried that much coin.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't know, I'm going on a tangent with that.
That does make sense. I mean,
Oh,
it's sad to hear that things that can be so difficult and traumatic can often lead us to a better
it
path.
goes two ways. It goes two
Yeah,
ways, I think.
yeah.
And for me, it's in a good way that it's made me mature in a lot of ways that I've kind of had to look after myself. That, lived by myself for three plus years now, and been able to have a steady job and so on and so forth. It's good in that way, but also then it's also like I've never really had a childhood that other kids have had, and I'm kind of envious of that. And that's kind of really why I want to be in Parliament one day, is to ensure that children like myself don't have to grow up the way I did, because the numbers are only increasing. It's, I think, around 500,000 now that grow up with drug addicted parents, and that number will continue to increase. But I at least want to make it my goal in life to at least just ensure that less of that happens.
Is that your main driver and passion for being involved in politics then?
the the stuff that I saw, no kid should have seen, if I'm being totally honest. And other kids that I grew up with that were in a similar situation with their parents, they weren't lucky enough to be put into foster care. They were still with their parents and they should have been taken away, and that's the fault of the system. But, a lot of them are living the same lives as their parents. Sometimes in the exact same way or sometimes in a similar way. Of course, you could say it's the parents' fault, and in some way that's because of the parenting. But it's more than that. It's the government, it's the state that have allowed this kind of way of life to happen, and there's not been enough support for drug addicted parents. And I think it's just so sad that then that obviously then passes down to the children, which shouldn't be involved in that in the first place.
Let's do a thought experiment. Let's fast forward 20 years and Bitcoin is much more widely accepted. There are still pounds and dollars,
It
but
will be, yes.
Bitcoin is really starting to gather momentum. Fiat system hasn't broken yet. Do you think that society will improve with that, or do you think it's
It's hard
completely...
because I don't necessarily think money just fixes that. It's more to it than that. Of course, for low income families or people within poverty, they're probably more likely to be alcoholics in a certain way, or drug addicts. If you improve the wealth of people, of course, I think that gradually does improve as people's living standards would improve, but it wouldn't solve it completely.
There's a lot of views around, the fact that we've got forever wars is
Yes.
because we're in the fiat system. And I do. It's funny, initially when I started hearing Bitcoin would solve all of those things, it just seems completely ludicrous. It's like, well, why would...
Yeah,
If
because
everyone was on Bitcoin, why would they stop having wars if someone invaded? But
no,
the
yeah.
more you go down the rabbit hole,
It's not.
like
Money
we said
doesn't just
earlier,
fix everything. There is more to it than any, whether it's hard money, soft money. I would say out of a lot of countries, although the way that the UK is at the minute, it is a lot more prosperous than other countries around the world. Yet we still have these issues,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so it's, and same as America, the richest country in the world, again still has big issues. Yeah, I don't think money just fixes those societal issues.
no, but I do think that soft money and issues with,
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
does certainly exacerbate a lot of those
Oh,
issues,
for
and,
sure.
and probably. And the other thing I've heard said, which I think completely resonates, is again, regardless of whether it's pounds, dollars, or Bitcoin, if things like wars had to be literally paid for by the people who lived in the countries that were taking on those wars, they wouldn't last anywhere near as long.
Oh no, they wouldn't. No, because it's all debt based.
Whether it's the Iraq war, whether it's what we're doing in Ukraine right now, and a lot of, without getting overtly political, some people support that we go into Ukraine, some people don't. The point is, when you look at how much money is being spent,
To finance those wars. Yeah.
but yeah, and so many
World War
people,
One, yeah, again, Bitcoin standard, yeah, that's went
yeah,
away from their gold reserves in World War One. The UK did to finance the war.
exactly, and so many people, I think, still, certainly in this country, whether it's the same in America, it probably is, kind of look at it as the government money. It's the government's money, and like when they were furloughed during COVID, it's like, well, yeah, the government needs to. It's like, well, the government is us. The government is,
We
yeah, and the government keeps growing, the government keeps spending, which all that's doing is putting more
more pressure on us.
and debt on. In fact, I can't remember which podcast it was on or who said it. I think it was a prince of some kind that I think was on Daniel Prince's podcast maybe, but he made the point that the more we overspend now and the more debt that we accumulate, we're just putting more and more pressure and limitations on future generations.
Generations,
We
yeah.
are we are the ones now and the generations before us that have overspent and thought that future growth would pay for overspending today, and it hasn't, and it isn't, and it won't. So every single month that passes, we're just making it harder and harder for my kids, for your future kids, for their kids, and it's like at some point that's got to break.
Yeah, it's just when, and for the long time that I've been involved within Bitcoin, like I've never actually picked up a book and read about it, and I think people need to do that. I know you can do all the thousands of hours watching YouTube content, but I think for me, I like to have a physical thing in my hand to read from and to actually draw the parallels, like I previously spoke, because we're not learning from the past. And although they could say, well, yeah, but it's not gold, or it's not, we're not dealing in glass beads, but it's still the same parallels where you keep inflating the currency. And again, because I think personally that because the way that money is now, it's all digitized, the system that we're in goes on for a lot longer than what we think, purely because of how they print money virtually now, not physically. And so I think we will be in a point where, whether it's 1,000 years time, 500 years time, but the can will be kicked a long way down the road. And I think it will probably be longer than my lifetime that fiat will still be involved, and it won't just be Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know. I tend to think it will
I think
break.
it implodes
I
rather
think
than
you
later.
will see. I personally, I think you will see fiat breaking. I mean, I guess we've already seen it in some countries. Is the dollar still going to be around when you're 70, 80? I think there's a chance it won't be, because if you look at the money supply,
Money
it's
supply.
just it's getting to the point now where it's just a
Vertically.
vertical line. It's like, and I can't. I'm for an accountant. I'm not actually that great at remembering precise numbers, but I think they spend more on national interest payments in America than they do on national defence, on the military, which is pretty insane when you think how much they spend on military in
Yeah,
America.
it's
And I
absolutely.
think in this country, I'm almost certain we spend more on repaying interest on our debt,
On our
not
debts.
actually paying off the debt, just paying the interest on our debt than we do on education. So it's like, again, we're paying more every month, week, year to fund the previous overspending than we are in investing today in the youth and the future that are going to
So
try
when
and
does
get
that
the
system
country
break,
out of this
or do
mess.
they just keep? How long can they keep kicking the can down the road? And the way I see it is they will just do it for a long time, because the way that, again, unless correct me if I'm wrong. So from watching is it The Big Short? I
Yeah,
think it's The Big Short, and is it Michael Barry, something like that?
I'm
I
not
can't
sure
remember
his
his name.
name. Yeah,
And when he obviously was putting in his puts in for the market, and it should have imploded, and it didn't. It took like another I think obviously from researching it took like another 2 to 4 years for it to all come into fruition. And so maybe yes, maybe I'm just being a bit, I don't mean hopeful, that's not what I mean, but pessimistic towards our own current system. But I would like it, of course, I would like to go to a Bitcoin standard sooner rather than later. But I just think they'll just keep kicking the can down the road for as long as they can in any way, shape, or form.
I think there is a strong argument that would say it will be a lot shorter than
Sure.
200 years. Yeah, well, I say we'll
Oh,
see.
well, we'll
We
see.
might not. So when it comes to your friends, how or colleagues, so like when you're doing your refereeing and stuff, or whatever context of your life, how often do you find yourself bringing up Bitcoin?
Semi-regularly, to be fair. A lot of them over the years have known that I've been buying up Bitcoin and buying up altcoins and things like that. Some of them pay a little bit more interest, but will ask me questions, but don't go into it any more than that. And then some think I'm outright crazy. And so family, for example, so my nan's partner, Tony, he doesn't he think Bitcoin's a scam and that it's a pyramid scheme, and that he said that the founder was arrested and put in prison. I'm thinking, what the hell are you on about? And he was just on about the FTX crash with
Yeah,
Sam Bankman-Fried, and I'm thinking, like, again, this is where either he's misconstrued the information that he's seen, or it's media outlets that have been misconstruing the truth and. Like, because obviously the FTX crash with what happened with the FTX, obviously they were manipulating Bitcoin, but obviously using customer funds, and so then it gets tainted, and it's nothing to actually do with Bitcoin. That's just to do with a bad actor that's been abusing the
yeah.
system that he's created. And so I think people need to kind of stop looking at that and actually research Bitcoin and stop. So, but But yeah, sorry, going back to friends and family. But Morgan, he's the keener one. He's obviously 40. I think that he's trying to. I think he's thinking of his future, and because I'm heavily involved with it, it was like, well, okay, well, I said, come to a meeting, and I just said, just speak with these people, get to know, ask questions around it, speak with them, and so he's again been asking me more and more questions, and especially since he's come to the meeting, we've been speaking a little bit more about it. So
Yeah.
I think that's just what people need to do, rather than just see it from the sidelines. Come to these meetings, and they will actually see people that are invested within this space a lot more and can explain it better than what I ever could.
Yeah, and I think just seeing normal and like-minded people where you can just have a conversation about it. And I mean, I'm a lot more literally invested now than I was when I first went to a meetup in. It was only like October last year, so we're talking like whatever that is, 6 months, 6-7 months.
So
So
what were you saying about selling your rental property? Just
yeah, well, hopefully that will happen this month. We've got a rental property that's at the moment 2% interest that will go up to 6%. So it just becomes completely uneconomical.
Yes.
And of course, they're not. You've always got a problem with a leaky tap or a boiler problem,
and that's what I don't see people. I understand. This is the transition that people kind of need to come away from, because we've now got all these people that are so heavily invested into the old way that traditional finance has always worked, buying property, buying hard assets, and when something new comes along like this that can't be made any, there cannot be physically any more than the 21 million Bitcoin, and there's more there's more lost. Obviously, there's like, is it 1 point something million that's been lost or something like that?
yeah, I'm sure at least
2 million or something like that, and so the money is even less, and so it can't be inflated, and yet there can be more houses, there can be, there's always a leaky tap, there's always, the stamp duty, there's all these things to worry about, and then you have to save a big deposit, when actually you can just buy the same, like, just say for a standard house, a deposit for a house, just say 20 to 50 grand, put it into Bitcoin. The returns that you'd get over the next 20, 50 years would be...
Well, I think we bought that flat in 2017 or 18, I think it was, and put down probably about a 40 grand deposit. If I bought 40 grand of Bitcoin at the same time, let's just say I'd be taking a lot more money out of, well, I wouldn't be selling it for one, but if I'd bought it then instead of putting the deposit down, then yeah, it would be worth a lot more than what the flat has made in that period of time. I think real estate, housing, second properties will just be completely demonetized, because the reason my wife and I used some of the money that we had to buy a second property wasn't to live in it. It's because the money that we had, we wanted to work harder for us to protect its spending power.
Indeed.
So again, I had started dabbling a bit with crypto around then and had a little bit of Bitcoin, but that was all speculation and number go up stuff. It wasn't like this could actually be somewhere I'd put a reasonable amount of my money. Hence, we said the best thing to do probably is to buy a flat, because then you get a cheap loan, someone else lives in it, pays you rent. But that's only because it's the money that we've got doesn't work. The last thing you do is keep hold of your money. You have to do something with it.
And it doesn't, even buying a property then hasn't beaten inflation.
When it comes to your home, I think it's a lot more complicated, because there's emotional attachments, and
Family.
if you have a family and the location you want to be that's near your job or whatever those things are.
A portfolio of property.
Yeah. But yeah, it's completely different. But even then, so property doubles every 10 years. But what people do is they go, it's amazing. I paid 300 grand for my house. Now it's worth 600,000. I've made 300 grand. And you go, that is incredible. How much interest have you paid on your mortgage? And didn't you get an extension built out the back? Yeah, I did actually. And you said the other year you spent 20 grand on new windows. Yeah. But still, I've done really well. So, well, no, it's your home. And if you had that aspect,
your home is not your investment until you die, and it's not for you.
Yeah. And again, I've got people similar age to me that look at their home as their access to retirement, and that again,
so that's so sad. That's really sad.
Yeah,
because it shouldn't be like that.
Well, it can't, can it? I mean, if you've got a big enough house you can downsize and free up capital, then okay, it might help. But if you want to stay in the house you're in, just not paying your mortgage anymore because it's paid off doesn't give you income, and you've just got a house that still needs council tax,
really low pension, state pension.
Yeah, so exactly.
You're just living a worse life than what you were when you were working full time.
Yeah. Yes. So it's quite. I do kind of feel not feel sorry for your generation, but I think you've still got the same societal pressures of go to university, get a job,
Yep.
buy a house, buy a bigger house, buy a nice car, go on nice holidays,
Indeed.
and all of those
All my
things.
family said all of that, and that's in every
Yeah,
family that you probably grew up with. That I think that's got to change because a lot of, not to say you shouldn't go to university, I think people should, but I'm finding that, how do I put it? If you want to be a lawyer, you definitely need a degree for that. If you need to be a doctor, you definitely need to be for that. But when you're getting ones that you can be like a One Direction degree and I'm just like really, or even
I've just signed up for that. Do you think I shouldn't have done?
no. But there seems to be now that there's a degree for every single thing, and yet everyone has a degree, and then people then aren't getting jobs because, well, there aren't any jobs for these degrees. So I think that kind of needs to change, where there needs to be, yeah, there needs to be a big change in the system, and actually to understand you don't need, if you want to be wealthy, you want to have a good life, you don't necessarily have to go to uni, because there are means and ways of building wealth that is not just through working a
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, well, apprenticeships are great for that. I mean, my niece is studying, and she's, I think, 4 years into a 6-year apprenticeship to become a lawyer, and she's getting client access, and
Yeah,
which if she was at uni, she
none of
wouldn't
it.
she wouldn't be getting that. So, I think they're fantastic. And the difference again from when I went to university, I came out with probably 2.5 grand of student loan debt. Now you go to university, you come out with what, 50?
If not more.
50 of tuition fees, and that's assuming your bank and mum and dad, or if that exists, are helping you with your other
Accommodation.
living costs and accommodation. Yeah, so I mean, it's a massive financial commitment, which I think these days you do have to question. There are benefits, of course, there are benefits from going to university, developmentally and
For sure, there is.
socially, and all of that. At that time of your life.
But is it worth the 50 grand in debt?
No, I mean, arguably, you could, let's say you're the parent of an 18-year-old, which actually I am. If
You could be my dad.
yeah, careful what you wish for, Jaden. We've got a spare room. If
Oh god.
you're not too young to be, you're not too old to be
Am
adopted.
I too old to pay rent?
And if she said, "Dad, I'd quite like to go and I don't know, live in Manchester and work doing something that I'm really passionate about for 12 months," I would probably see that as a better investment in her development and her future than if she said, "I want to do 3 years at uni in graphic design."
Indeed. But this is sorry, I know we're going a little bit off topic of Bitcoin, but when it comes to, again, graphic design and similar jobs, why would you need a degree for it if actually it's your creative mind, it's your, you can learn these things elsewhere other than getting into debt and learning it from a teacher that is teaching you that, to me, has never been successful in delivering that, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
Your
yeah,
creativity is your like I say, your value. So if you're good at painting, well, why do you need to get an art degree for it? You could go out, paint, or graphic design, whatever it is, and earn an income through that without the 3 years, 4 years of learning. You
yeah,
can go straight out, learn how to. Again, it's all a learning process. So you're not going to pick up clients straight away. All these little things is a learning process. Starting your own business, all of that can be learned without getting into thousands of pounds of debt.
yeah. And there are so many with the internet and technology these days. Like you don't need to go and sit in a lecture and read books, or
Sure.
there are free YouTube videos. There are ways you can try and monetize your craft without having to go down the traditional
I
routes.
think people need to, yeah, need to finally learn that, and I think that would be amazing, where you just get people straight away into the workplace, creating value for, well, the country that you're in, and I
Yeah,
think that'd be
yeah.
amazing.
I think it's another one of those societal things, though, which brings us back to what we were talking about 10 minutes ago, which is this whole treadmill of right. You've now turned 18. You need to pick a university. You need to, and it's
Well,
like,
mine
well,
was the car thing more though. With my family, I drove a Peugeot 107 for, God, it would have been four and a bit years. And
yeah,
again, a tiny little car, but it was £20 in tax a year, and I was paying really well for me cheap insurance, but still bloody expensive. And that's what I kind of think about it. I could then save more, I could invest more, and that's the way I was thinking about it. But yeah,
yeah,
my family were kind of like, well, when are you going to upgrade your car? But I'm like, why do I need, again, I love my family, but it's almost that, well, why do I need to just buy a new car to impress you? To make you believe that I'm doing well. And I don't think that that's the case. I don't think that should be the case, because if I was going to do what all my mates did and got a loan or bought a brand new car or relatively new car that was 10
yeah,
grand, 20 grand, But that 10, 20 grand that I could have invested, that could be a lot more in 20 years' time than me just buying a BMW. I would not be where I am today if I'd have done that. There's
Yeah,
no way.
yeah.
There's no way I'd be where I am today if I'd have done that.
So again, that shows a massive level of maturity for someone your age, and actually independent thinking, because it would be much easier for you to go along with what your family were saying and what your mates are doing and toe the line and be the sheep that says, go on then, I'll get a lease on a new BMW 3 Series and, it'll cost me 500 quid a month, but, whatever, at least everyone will think I've been really successful.
But no, don't. Yeah,
It's shallow.
indeed, it is shallow. But again, if that's the way you want to live a life, do it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you'll regret it when you are 70.
Yeah. Well, and I'll, again, be completely honest, I was doing it from around your age to probably only about 10 years ago. I cared a lot more about what people thought about me, which I don't really care as much about now. And I felt that people were evaluating my success by reviewing the kind of the car I was driving and all of that, which is just complete.
Life is so much better when you start to come away from that mindset. I don't really have any social media. I've got some, but I don't have Instagram. I don't have anything like that. And actually, my mental health has become so much better since coming away from that. When I remember being 14 to even 18, where I'd be posting, doing stupid selfies or gym pictures and, all for likes and all for attention.
Yeah.
Actually, once you come away from that mindset, life is so much better. Anxiety, caring what people thought, having to dress a certain way. Of course, you want to make sure you kind of look good and things like that. It's that where it kind of sucks the life out of you to think that every decision is based for someone else and not yourself.
Yeah. And now what's great is you freed yourself up to spend all your time listening to Bitcoin and me and reading the Bitcoin Standard.
Indeed.
So, your life is complete, Jaden, at 23. It's amazing.
It's only going to get better.
Before we head off, the last question I ask my guests is, what's one belief you held before Bitcoin that you've completely changed your mind about?
I think one that comes home to me is, so obviously it's obviously not have to be Bitcoin related, unless it has to.
No. There's no rules.
Be yourself, and be yourself first of all, and ensure that what you do now, in this very moment, every step of the way when you wake up, is going to be attributing to the future, your future self. So you put in the hard work now, it'll make life so much better in 10, 20 years, and you'll thank yourself for it. So make sure you do the hard work now so you don't have to do as much work when you're older.
Again, come back to the point that for a 23-year-old to come out with something like that, it's encouraging, because I don't think there are many people at 23 that would have that kind of mindset. So it's good to hear it.
No, thank you for kind of listening to my ramble. It's the first kind of podcast / interview I've ever done in my life. So I'm a bit
it's good. I've enjoyed it. I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and it's great to have that different age profile and experience, and these are always just conversations with people, and generally people are interesting, and you certainly are.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So and it's good.
Another 4 years, next 4 years when I'm an MP, we'll do one then.
Well, yeah, quite. Well, you might have moved on from me then. You might not be my number one fan.
Wearing your gilet, and I'm going to try some of your kombucha.
Great. Well, if someone wants to find you, Jaden, is LinkedIn probably the best place?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. At the moment, it's kind of got my refereeing stuff on it, but I don't really post on there. But if you want to connect with me on there, please do. So it's Jaden Lister, Jaden Lister, and just message me, and then we'll find another way of communicating, whether that's through WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever. Okay, well, thanks very much for your time. Obviously, I've met you in real life, but it's been great actually getting to know you a bit better through the last hour or so. So thanks, Jaden. Thank you very much, Gary. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you again.